All right, great. Let's continue. This is 𝗙𝗟𝗔𝗥𝗧𝗬 with Sunrise Scribbles, and today we are talking about how to get organized with our 2-week plan. So the last 2 videos, we went through how to capture all of our ideas, and then we planned the content over a 2-week time frame. But we didn't get specific yet. So now today we're going to look at how to organize this into each of the 2 weeks that are upcoming. So let's see what it looks like. All right, the most important takeaway from this entire process is that this page does not work on its own. However, this is where most people start. Most people grab that 1 week at a glance page and they start there. They start putting their ideas directly into pieces on their 1 week plan. What I want you to take away from this is that you need to do some pre-work before you get here. You need to know what your ideas are, you need to know what categories they fall into, and you need to have a rough idea of what your 2 weeks look like before you get to this step. So if you haven't done it, go back to videos 1 and 2 and plan out your content and your 2-week strategy before you get started. This is what this week looks like. This is my template that's designed for Substackers. Now I also have a blank template that you can use for anything else. So you can use it for meal planning or home building or your business, whatever you need, whatever you have a need to plan content out over 2 weeks for. But this is what it looks like, and we'll take a moment and we'll actually go through it together just like we've done the other ones, and we'll see how this process works. So when you see it, you'll notice that there are 5 sections. These can be customized when you look at your blank template. I'll go through them from the Substack view. So at the top, you'll notice that that's where we take everything that we've been working on so far and we put it in that section. So that's where your categories go. But you have other sections to help you plan your time throughout the week. You have a daily to-do section, you have a notes section. This is specific to Substack, but you could use it for other things. You have a weekly to-do section and an ideas section. And instead of going over all of this on a slide, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up my planner and I'm just going to go through it with you and show you how it looks there. So how we want to do this is we take week 1 off of that 2-week planner. So we have our general idea of what we want in week 1, and we use that to fill out the top of the grid. Then you're going to split the type of work. So the top is really where your content lives. For example, I want to publish my newsletter on Fridays. That's going to be in the top section. But if I know when I want to write the newsletter, then I'm going to put that into the daily to-do section. So I'll walk you through that and see how it works. And then you also have an opportunity to plan your notes strategy using this planner or use that space for something else. So let's take a look. All right, so now that we have done all of our planning, we are going to fill out our this week plan. Remember, you have 2 of these. So if you have the planner, you're going to want to print out 2 copies. You're going to look at your 2-week planner to see what you chose to go on which day. So I'm looking at the 2-week planner and I see that on Fridays, I decided to do my podcast. So I am going to look here and I'm going to see that I have a podcast, and I can just, again, check the box. Maybe I put the name of it if I know what the name of it is. Then I'm also seeing in week 1, because we're just looking at week 1, on Tuesday I have an article. So I'm going to say, I'm just going to actually write article to differentiate between the fact that the other one is a newsletter. And then I see that on Monday, I have some marketing. That's going to be my chat. So I'm going to look here and I'm going to put the chat on Monday. And then finally, on Sunday, I have scheduled notes. And so this, I'm actually going to put in a different section. I'm going to put this into the daily to do. So I'm going to put that. We decided we do it on Sundays. So let me go over to Sunday here, and I'm going to put it right here. schedule notes. All right. So now we have our plan for the week. Now, I did tell you that there's a couple of different sections to this. So let's take a minute to go through those. Up here at the top, this top section, this is when you want things to be scheduled. So this is going to be your content, when your content goes out, or it could be your meals. So maybe you have vegetarian is going to be on Monday. That's like when you eat the meal. It's not when you cook the meal. If you're planning in advance, if you cook when you eat, then yes, it is. That's where your content goes. Then the next section here is your daily to-do. So this is what's going to keep you on task for what you need to do each day. So let's say you've got this article that you want to go out on Tuesday. You need to write that before Tuesday. So let's say we're going to write our article on Monday. So I'm going to write my articles on Mondays. And then I know, because I have my 2-week planner, I know that I have an article, a newsletter coming the following week. And maybe I want to get started on that early. So maybe I work on my newsletter on Friday. And this is just an example because I probably wouldn't do that, but you get my point. So these are the days these are your to-do. What do I need to actually do those days? And at the top, that's going to be your plan. So this is your plan, and this is your action. Okay? That's how we understand those two different areas. Then we have a couple other sections here, and these are somewhat optional, but I do think they're helpful. The next area that we have is notes. So this, again, this is specific to Substack. You can make it whatever you want, but in my Substack example, I'm going to say I want to plan out my notes in advance. So this way, when it comes time to actually post those notes, I know what I'm going to be talking about. And maybe I write those notes in advance too. So this is saying I'm going to schedule them. I personally schedule my notes. I usually write them over the weekend and then I'll schedule them. But I have some ad hoc, like I'll schedule a couple a day and then I'll usually post a couple as they come to me. So I have a nice mix of things that I was thinking about in advance and things that happen in the moment. That's worked for me. Do whatever works for you. But if you are like that and you want to schedule advance, that's a time to do it. So say I have a note that I maybe wrote and I want to post it and it's about my daughter. So I'm going to say, okay, a note about my daughter, and then I have another one about my dog and another one about work. So I'm going to schedule those 3 notes in advance. And that way when I look at my plan, because I work, I have a job. I work for a corporate job as well as doing this YouTube and Substack stuff. So I can't always be on. So this saves me time. And this way I look down and I know what's going out when, and I know that I have all my bases covered. It really takes a lot of mental load off of me and removes a lot of that anxiety. Finally, we have 2 more sections here at the bottom. We've got our weekly to do. So anything that doesn't have to happen each day, that's going to go in this section. So this is another action box, but the difference is that this only has to happen once a week. So let me tell you how I like to use this. I actually like to use it as a reminder of the things that, like my articles that I need to write. So what I would do is I would say I need to write 1 article this week, because this is sort of for next week. This is how I use it. I want to write my article this week and then publish it next week. So I'm going to write 1 article, and then I'm going to write my newsletter, and maybe I need to plan my notes. You know, the recurring things that need to happen throughout the week, but only have to happen once. So I don't need to put them on a specific day, because I know I'll get to them as I can. Now, this may not work for you. You may know that on Wednesday nights, that is your only free night. Your husband, your partner, your whatever, your wife watches the kids that night. And so you've taken Wednesdays to do your thing. In that case, you're going to use this Wednesday block. Okay? You want to use that time and say, that's when I'm going to do it. That way, when every day you can open this up and you can look at it and you know what goes where. This is your map for the week. So you want it to be as accurate as possible. The last section here is your ideas. So in this ideas section, this is just blank. This is free space to use however you wish. So it could just be notes. It can be, I had a great article idea and I want to write it down. It's really whatever you want to do with it, but that's what that section is for. So now that I've made this week beautiful for us, let's move on and talk about the next level. You may not need the next level. It really depends on how busy you are. This, for many people, this is as far as it gets, and this is good enough. But if you're one of those people that's super busy, then you're gonna love the next step, which is to look and focus in on what's happening each day of the week. So next up, video 5. This is where we get super specific and we look at the day of. So we've gone from really broad all the way into the super specific, and the next thing that we're going to talk about is, what do I need to do today? I'll see you in a minute.